Those you guys would like to see a video of it printing actual multicolors. This is a replacement section for the upper hull Voyager model I'm printing. She started printing gray, so it'll finish off, or the silver rather. So it'll finish off all that outside stuff there on this piece. There's not a lot right in here that it's doing on this one. But you see on the next part, the tan, if you will, of the escape pods and the black on the end here. So you see how it, focus in here. See how it actually prints in the black pieces, and it has to make a larger bit so that it's got more than just a handful of millimeters to hang on to. But there you'll see that tan sticking out for the escape pod. It's doing its gray there. And on a piece like this where it's actually got to change filament twice per layer, it won't always double up one of them. And we'll try and go in order. So like silver, black, white, white, black, silver, silver. So it tries to minimize the number of layer changes that it can do. There it's going to do a layer change right back there. So it goes into the back. And let me see if you can zoom in there. Yeah, there you go. That's the nozzle right there. So it's going to sit there. Now it's retracting the silver, and it's going to spit out black. So you can hear the machine in the background, but you can't see it yet. What it'll do here, sorry, is you'll see it'll start extruding black filament there. So it's got to clear what's in the nozzle. There's a cutter right about here level, and it's got to extrude out the remaining bit that's in the nozzle. I'll show you the nozzle here in a second. But it's got to clean all that out so that it's got nothing but black at the end of it. You can see it getting darker. There. So that's more or less black. And then it'll actually go back into this corner and print what we call a prime tower. After it cleans off the nozzle, goes here and prints just a little bit so that it can make sure all the pressures are even. And after that, it's instructed to print, in this case, like I said, it's doing just a little bit of black, 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 and now it's done with the 2 layers of black. So it did, essentially, I don't know, we'll make up a number, 1502 and then 1503 in black. So now it just started layer 1503, and again, I'm just making up numbers. At the moment, it's printing layers 1/10 of a millimeter high, and so you can about imagine every time it does a layer, filament change for a 250 millimeter tall structure, printing layers 1/10 of a millimeter at a time. Changing of the filament layers is what takes all the time. So now it's putting gray back in there. We'll repeat that process. The black will come out as it starts pushing gray through. You'll see it getting lighter. That back end hole back there is kind of what we jokingly refer to as the poop chute. There's a bucket back there that catches all the little wasted filament. If you got a model that has a lot of layer changes, which is in a lot of, not so many different colors, but different colors among many heights. So of course on this model, for example, it's going to start with this sensor array, and that's going to go halfway up the model. So there's a layer change every layer from there, on up. That ends up with a lot of layer changes, and you'll end up actually having about half of the volume of filament is extruded in waste. So again, it'll go back and does the cleaning, does the purge tower, and now since this is gray, it'll do about everything on here. Goes through and does the perimeters, and then it does the inside fill, which you see is the squiggly lines. It's actually like a wave that ends up after a while going the other direction. So it ends up kind of like, I forget what they call it, but one of those things where you can kind of have the most amount of strength for the least amount of volume. It ends up being one of those things. And I forget the name of it, but gyroid infill is the name of it, but you get the concept. So there it's printing all that infill. And then it'll move to the other piece. Prints the outside edges. That hole in the middle, of course, is where you normally put lights. And that's, of course, his design. But it treats that as another outside wall. And so it'll print the outside most edge of those slower than the others to get a little bit higher surface quality. And then I'll go back and do the same thing on this third piece. And you'll see here, let me zoom in if I can, it skipped printing on that white for the escape pod. So it didn't print an escape pod. So you can almost kind of see that the gray there is just a little taller than on the right, on the left where the escape pod would be. So again, we're going to go back. I'll try the tube actually this time. So it pulls the filament out. And this time it's going to put the white filament in. Watch the tube carefully. You might see it coming through the tube. There it goes. So pushed it in through the tube into the nozzle, and then it'll heat up, and you'll see it'll go down to the purge tower, clean that up, and then to get constant pressure in the nozzle. And then once it's done there, it'll come and it'll print just this piece here, and then conversely on the other side. So I actually have a model of a nozzle here. Well, not even a model, but one of the nozzles. It's laid here. This is one of my smaller nozzles here, and that's a 0.2 millimeter. The one that's in there now is a 0.4 millimeter nozzle, and it cuts it right at the top here, and then spits it down here. The heater on the bottom goes right on here. This is where it actually melts the filament, and then that comes out of the little. You can't even hardly see that hole in there because this is so small. But it's got this heat sink up top here so that it doesn't melt it in here. So that as it cuts, it can have, actual hard plastic to be able to pull everything else. So it's not melted here, stays not melted until it goes through just this end where it's melted, in this case at 220 degrees Celsius, to come out with, not liquid, but plasticized plastic. And then it can extrude that, and then as it goes do this thing, of course it lays down the shape. So we missed drying that escape pod right there, but now it's going to come back and do gray again, and so you'll see the idea. All of the little details on here are printed the same way, so again you can kind of see that on the lettering here. It would have been printed all the same way. So the little bit that hangs out in here just like that, so those letters that are raised would have half of the letter inside, nested inside, to give it some actual strength, just like the black sensor array bits here. So anyhow, I know, long video, but kind of fun to watch this thing. I have been known to stand here and watch this thing for 20 minutes or a half hour at a time. And it's a purge tower there. And then it'll print all of the shell on all these pieces on this one. It starts with the support structure, and then starts into the model itself. That support structure in this end is literally just extra plastic that it prints, just so that it, as this thing continues to grow, it'll end up meeting together, so that it doesn't topple over, because this thing kind of curves up and to the right like this. But you can see the same concept of support structure down in here. So we printed extra material just so that we have something to hold on to that overhang, because where that overhang would go, it would depend on something for it to rest on. So you can't just print in the middle of free space. It has to have something to build from. So in this case, you have to build the gantry to hold up the model before you can print the model. So depending on what and how you're printing, of course, the more you can reduce things like that, the better. But as slow as this goes, This is the fastest printer in the land. So, there you go.